Hello, everybody. This is Philip Martin, and this is on film for March 18th, 2022. I want to take just a minute here before I get into the regularly scheduled programming stuff and say just a word about an event that happened this week. Brent Renaud was killed in Ukraine. I found out about it Sunday morning, and we are devastated, as I am sure most of the Little Rock and Arkansas film community is, because just about everybody in that community knew or was mentored by Brent and his brother Craig, who were two of the founders with Owen Brainerd and Jamie Moses of the Little Rock Film Festival, which opened a lot of doors for a lot of people and was really important to the development of the what I will call the Little Rock scene, the Arkansas scene. The fact that we have a fairly interesting, vibrant film community here in the state is largely due to the efforts of Brent and Craig and the Little Rock Film Festival people. I don't want to belabor it. I just want to say that I understand that he touched a lot of lives here. He was a great artist, a brave human being, and a good guy. And we're going to miss him, and we're going to go on. And I think that times like this, we need to remember that not everybody is a blowhard who sits behind a desk and, gives their opinion of the world. There are people like Brent who are out there on the front lines doing the real work. And he deserves his memory to be honored, and he deserves our thanks, and the people he left behind deserve our affection and support. So we'll be back in just a second with the regular column video thing. Thanks. Thank you, Levi Agee, for that photograph that I took off your Facebook page. Anyway, on with the show. Next week, March 24th, actually, is the 50th anniversary of the theatrical premiere of Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. In order to capitalize on this, Paramount is releasing all three of these Godfather films in 4K Ultra HD on the 22nd. The list price for this is $90. There are tons of bonus features. I mean, there's lots of stuff going on in here. A whole packet of bonus disc that I haven't really looked at, but they have just, The Godfather Part 3, and also The Godfather, or Mario Puzo's The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which is Francis Ford Coppola's do-over of Godfather 3. When I told Joe Riddle about this, he suggested that there was no such movie, and that the only thing that he could find that had that rubric was a podcast. But it is right here, so you see it. Again, it's going on sale on the 22nd, which I guess is, Wednesday? Is that Wednesday of next week? Maybe Thursday of next week. Anyway, The Godfather. One of the greatest movies of all time, and Godfather 2, I sort of like run those movies together, sort of conflate them, because I think that if you're looking for a, almost 6 hour extravaganza, that I think they're worth watching back to back. But whatever, The Godfather, let's just talk about it, because it is the film that came out 50 years ago, March 24th. If you remember seeing it in your initial run, and probably you don't because you're probably too young, but if you did, like me, you can probably appreciate how much and how little America has changed since then. Back then, Richard Nixon was president. We were fighting war in Vietnam. Seemed to be a real chance that the country could fly apart. The end of the 70s, or the end of the 60s, what I think of the 60s really didn't happen until the fall of Vietnam or something. I would put the 60s as starting with the JFK assassination and lasting until the fall of Saigon. Just the way I think of it, the era, not obviously the chronology. The literal 60s were 1960 through 1969. But the era, the feeling, the vibe, extended through 72. So 72 is when, The Godfather comes out. And it's funny now, because thinking about it now, I'm so ingrained in thinking of March as kind of like a dumping ground for motion pictures. Pictures that weren't really promising get released in March. Now, that's not always the case. I think Get Out got released in March, and I think a few others have been released in March recently. But, for the most part, it's not the time of year when you hold your Godfather-type movie. If you think it's a Godfather-type movie, you hold it to the end of the year for awards consideration, for that holiday crowd sort of thing. The movie theater, the movie calendar hadn't quite codified in 72. But even so, Paramount wasn't expecting much more than a genre mob picture when it commissioned 33-year-old Francis Ford Coppola to direct a film version of Mario Puzo's best-selling page-turner, which I remember actually looking at before the movie came out. I mean, I don't know where I saw it, but it was in somebody's house, my mom's house, or my uncle's house, or a neighbor's house, or something. I actually picked it up and read a little bit of it, and I remember a certain description of Sonny Corleone that I'll never forget. Anyway, it's a huge book. And Coppola was a strange kind of pick for this. He wasn't really an unknown, but he had never had a hit before. He had written and directed 4 features: a musical, Finian's Rainbow, and the semi-experimental feature, The Rain People, 1969, which you really should check out. It's about a disillusioned suburban housewife, Shirley Knight, who discovers she's pregnant and then lights out for the territory. Runs to the west away from her conventional marriage. She picks up a hitchhiker, a brain-damaged former college football player, played by James Caan, the future Sonny Corleone. And Robert Duvall, another future Godfather player, shows up as a highway patrolman. It's a rambling film. It's one of those nearly incoherent kind of films about dissatisfaction and searching. But it fits in with the better-known new Hollywood films of the same year, Easy Rider, Midnight Cowboy. But that's not why they gave Coppola the assignment. Coppola got the assignment because he had written the script for Patton, which won his first Academy Award. And he shared that with Edwin North, a veteran screenwriter, who got called in after the original director Schaffner, Franklin J. Schaffner, who... Good trivia question. Who directed Patton? Had some concern about that draft. And I saw Coppola at Tribeca 5 years ago. And he was talking about it. And he said that he wrote the script for Patton, and the script was controversial because they thought it was stylized. It was stylized. It's supposed to be like, a conventional war movie like The Longest Day or one of those. And the script was was different. I mean, it has this very bizarre opening scene where Patton stands up in front of the American flag and gives that speech. And everybody knows that now, and it seems quite natural. But at the time, that was a little postmodern for Hollywood. He wasn't fired, but they said kind of like, well, thanks for the script. They went and hired another writer. And he said he remembered being, kind of raked over the coals for the opening scene. But George C. Scott had read Coppola's script, and he liked it. And he only took the part based on them doing Coppola's script, not the revised script. So even though Mr. Edmund North, gets a screen credit and gets an Oscar out of it, apparently they didn't use any of his script. Now, after Patton, goes on to win 7 Oscars and is a box office hit, Paramount still offered the job to Sergio Leone, who turned it down to make Once Upon a Time in America, which is a good movie. Robert De Niro's in it. And then they went to Peter Bogdanovich, who thought it over. Interesting, Bogdanovich said he would have cast Edward G. Robinson, who was still alive in 1972, which sometimes that seems kind of hard to imagine, that he's still around. He would have cast him as Don Corleone if he had made the film. But Bogdanovich had his own thing. He wanted to go make What's Up, Doc, and he had the juice coming off the Last Picture Show to do that, so he did that. Peter Yates, Richard Brooks, Arthur Penn, Bonnie and Clyde, Costa Gravas, Otto Preminger, they all were approached by Paramount to make this movie. This pot-boiling, mafia genre pictures, updated gangster pictures, what they really wanted. A kind of a soap opera with, elements of Peyton Place in it and sex and all this stuff. They all turned it down. They gave it to Coppola, and Coppola was like kind of reluctant to do it because he didn't like the novel. He had tried to read it, and it just seemed he was repulsed by the sex and the tawdriness of it. He stopped around page 50. I was disappointed when I read it, he said. This is what he said in Tribeca. But he needed the money. He needed the money. In 2017, they were having a reunion of the Godfather and Godfather 2 cast at Tribeca. That's where he was speaking. His production company, American Zoetrope, owed more than $500,000 in 1972 to Warner Brothers. And George Lucas, who's one of Coppola's partners, said, Francis, you have to do this to bail us out. Coppola had 2 kids, another on the way. He was totally broke. And he knew that even if they fired him from directing this project, he was going to get paid. So he took it. And another funny thing about Puzo's book, Paramount had optioned the story before he even wrote the novel, which that was news to me back when 2017 when I found this out. The expectations and the budgets really went up after it became a bestseller, because at first they're going to make this, kind of sleazy movie about it, but then they have a best-selling novel, so now you got so they raised the budget from the $2.5 million to $6 million, which was enough for a real period production. They didn't have to shoot this in Kansas City and put it in modern times. They could shoot it in New York in the 1940s. They could do the period stuff, and they could afford a real star. The studio wanted Laurence Olivier or Ernest Borgnine or Danny Thomas as Don Corleone. Now, all 3 of those guys are intriguing to me, because I think they all could have had a really interesting take on the role. But Coppola wanted Marlon Brando, who was by then considered a has-been. Paramount said they could screen test him. And, Brando had an ego, and he didn't want a screen test. So Coppola showed the studio the makeup test that Brando himself had filmed at his house. Brando, in his autobiography, Songs My Mother Taught Us, remembered, I went home and did some rehearsing to satisfy my curiosity about whether I could play an Italian. I put on some makeup, stuffed Kleenex in my cheeks, worked out the characterizations first in front of a mirror, then on a television monitor, and after working on it, I decided I could create a characterization that would support the story. People at Paramount saw the footage and liked it, and that's how I became the Godfather. But how did this pot-boiling crime novel was written, they say, to cover Mario Puzo's gambling debts, become such a monumental American epic? Paramount saw some potential, especially after the novel became a hit. But it's, obvious that they saw this as a crime movie. And as a crime movie, yeah, you could transpose it to Kansas City or some other cheaper location, some other cheaper time period. But Coppola, he had the idea. He imagined it as a metaphor for American capitalism and suggested that the difference between the Corleones and the Kennedys basically is a matter of perception. The Godfather is a story about going straight or trying to go straight. Time and time again, it comes back to these themes of legitimacy and acceptance and how old loyalties and expectations frustrate the immigrant aspiration to become American. It's about how power has its roots in crime, how every great fortune is founded on a great crime. There's a scene, this is in two, where Al Pacino's Michael Corleone tells the corrupt senator played by G.D. Spradlin, who's a wonderful character actor, "You and I are part of the same hypocrisy." This comes right a few minutes before Kay, Diane Keaton, reminds Michael that 7 years before he had promised the family would be completely legit in 5 years. So he's run 2 years over his own deadline. If you look at Coppola's mobsters, they're executives. They're businessmen first. The Corleones, Hyman Roth, they're businessmen. And like the head of corporations that make money from the misery of the poor and the powerless, they can love their children and feel guilt. Michael, who is the family's Hamlet, goes from Yale Law School into the family business out of a sense of duty and responsibility, not because he wants to be some sort of romantic outlaw, not because he wants to, walk on the wild side. He's doing this because he feels duty bound to do it. And Brando's Vito Corleone is, if you look at him, you take his actions and stuff, he's nothing less than a gangster saint. He doesn't deal drugs, and he sees his role as a peace broker with obligations. He's doing what he can to escape the violent Mott Street mob. He doesn't want to, be associated with these thugs. The Godfather indulges in nostalgic myths that criminals once followed a code, which is a very dubious idea. It's a very romantic, dubious idea that criminals actually are bound by a code. Yet, even if it isn't like, a newsreel, it's an American masterpiece. It's a fluky blend of myth and propaganda bathed in these deliberately dark, honeyed light by cinematographer Gordon Willis. It just happens to combine great acting, memorable dialogue, and one of those cheesy, slouching toward highbrow scores that movie audiences always adore. If you haven't seen the movie, you've seen the movie. You've seen it. You've seen The Godfather parodied, and Kowtow 2, and hundreds of movies and television shows from Goodfellas to The Sopranos to Saturday Night Live, The Simpsons, the sad spectacle of Brando doing a parody of himself in the 1990 Matthew Broderick movie, The Freshman. The movie's images are inescapable as its aphoristic dialogue. Everybody knows these quotes. This is the business we chose, not this is the business we have chosen, even though that's how I tend to say it, and most people probably quote it that way. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. Dan Liebarger, in his piece on The Godfather that's running in this section, says that his drama teacher or speech teacher told him that line, and it made him think of a used car salesman, which I thought was pretty funny. Leave the gun, take the cannolis. Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. And from 2, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Never hate your enemies. It affects your judgment. It's dangerous to be an honest man. The richest man is the one with the most powerful friends. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer. If anything in this life is certain, it's history has taught us anything, is that you can kill anyone. I believe in America. The Godfather is 50 years old next week. Paramount would like it if I showed you this again. This is really terrific. I mean, it's list price is $90. You can get it for less than that. I don't know, probably wherever you get your DVDs. If you're still a DVD getter like I am, I get DVDs because I like stuff. And it comes with all these wonderful extras that I'm never going to get to. But it's good to have a fresh copy of this around. The Godfather is 50. It's still vital. And next week, you can buy it. And you can watch it anytime you want, really. It's really pretty easy to find on all the streaming services and stuff like that. I mean, I have a digital copy of it. I think I got from iTunes like 5 years ago or something. I've got all 3 of them in a set. They're, so they're around. But I also have this, and I'm keeping this. I'm not giving it away. I've done that before. You people don't participate in those things. I don't know why. Try to give DVDs away. Never works. Never get any. I get one person maybe, who does the thing that I've asked you to do. Anyway, so this week is an interesting week. We're back with movies in theaters. 2 horror movies. One which sounds fairly interesting, X, which is Ty West retro slasher porno movie set in Texas in the 70s, and it's about a group of kids, crazy kids, who go to Texas to make a porn movie and get more than they bargained for. It's allegedly very gory. It just had its world premiere at South by Southwest, and now it's opening in theaters. Yeah. The other one, Uma, and I hesitate to say this, because Sandra Oh is one of my favorite actresses, or actors, as I should say, but it's apparently Sony doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in it. I looked at the press kit, and there's only 2 photos in there. It's a horror movie. It's about a Korean-American woman, who moves with her kid to a farm in a rural part of America. And strange things start happening when the remains of her estranged mother, Uma in Korean, arrive at the farm. But the most interesting one, at least to my mind, and I haven't seen it yet, is Focus Features the Outfit, which reminds me of a Jason Isbell song. But aside from that, The Outfit is a kind of a chamber drama. It was shot during COVID, so it's basically like a film play that is set in one room in a tailor shop in Chicago, that it's frequented by these bad actors, these mobsters, and the principal character is the tailor, Mark Rylance, who is one of fascinating, wonderful actor, and it goes a little like this. Timeless. like The Godfather. Not like this video. Anyway, that's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Take care.